Hi everyone, and welcome back to Jarissa Explains. I'm Marissa.
And I'm Jamie. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about haunted dolls.
Creepy stuff for Halloween.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, in the spirit of Halloween, we decided to bring to you all a creepy subject. So we're going to give you some of the ones that we did research on and see whether you like them and enjoy them and whether you believe it or not.
Yes, and mostly he did the research on them, so I feel like I'm going to be reacting a lot to these, and I'm kind of creeped out by this. I don't like this topic.
I actually have met one of the dolls that we're going to be discussing in this video, so I'm actually a full believer. I believe spirits can probably go into manifest themselves in dolls, so this was actually a very fun subject for me to research. I hope you all enjoyed as well. Stay tuned.
The first doll that we're going to talk about is Letta.
The history of Letta the Haunted Doll begins with a man named Kerry Walton from Brisbane, Australia. Kerry originally found the doll in an abandoned house in New South Wales, Australia. The doll is a 200-year-old gypsy marionette with real human hair. After retrieving the doll, Kerry began to have supernatural events happen around his home and family. His children reported seeing objects move around the house at night, as well as other friends and family say they saw the doll move on its own on several occasions. There have also been visible scuff marks all over the house that seemingly have come from the doll. Kerry, after some time, tried to even sell the doll but claimed he felt physically incapable of doing so. It's because of all these weird and spooky events that Kerry named the doll Letta, short for Letta Me Out, referring to the spirit he says resides in the doll. Letta lives with the Walton family in Warwick, Queensland to this day.
Letta Me Out.
Yeah, Letta Me Out. I don't know. That seemed kind of popcorny to me.
Yeah,
you know?
Letta, like, why would you say Letta Me Out, not just like let me out?
Yeah, honestly.
Well, what came to my mind when it talked about the scuff marks, remember in Annabelle?
Yeah, the Annabelle movie.
Not the Annabelle movie, but the one before that.
The Conjuring?
Yeah, The Conjuring. She was like running around the walls and stuff, and there was little footprints on the walls, wasn't there?
Yeah.
At least I remember that. Maybe I just made that up in my mind, but who knows?
He found this doll in a house randomly, and then a bunch of weird things started happening, and it's just like, that's really some spooky stuff involving a doll, you know?
Do you believe it in this?
No.
Oh, you don't?
No, I don't believe this guy because he like tempted to sell it and everything. I would be curious to see if he's using it in any way to benefit from it. I should have done the research of that to see whether he was making any money off of this.
True.
Because it's also a very skeptical thing that you're like, I came close to selling it, but something really kept me from selling this doll. A lot of the accounts are just from their family. So when you're dealing with accounts of like a supernatural thing where it's only just one family that keeps reporting all the instances, like it's hard for me to just be like, clearly that's true, you know?
Yeah, I would like to see some proof of it, but yeah.
Absolutely.
That's creepy nonetheless to think, you know, if that is true.
There it is.
Ew. Oh, I think I might have saw that.
I know. It's real creepy, ain't it?
That is just a creepy looking doll. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, the fact that she looks so creepy is like maybe he could, you know, embellish the story, or maybe it's all true. I don't know.
Like you see this and you see that he's been on TV shows with this and everything. He probably doesn't want to get rid of the notoriety of having a very spooky doll.
How would you even continue to say it's spooky or like haunted if there's no proof that it is haunted?
Well, it becomes your word against everybody else's, you know, and then you'll just be like, well, I know what I saw, I know what I'm dealing with, and then it causes everybody else to step back and be like, maybe you are experiencing that. I don't know, I didn't see it.
Well, let us know what you guys think about this doll in the comments below.
Absolutely. The next doll we're going to be discussing today is Annabelle.
Many people have heard of Annabelle the doll from the Conjuring film series as well as her own self-titled films. But the Hollywood version of this doll is a bit more grand than the actual Annabelle. The true Annabelle is in fact an old Raggedy Ann doll that was given to a student nurse in 1968. At first, the nurse just assumed it was a plain Raggedy Ann doll, but soon after began to hear weird noises and distant chatter echo through different rooms of the house that the doll was in. Then the doll began to act very strangely. She would place the doll in one room and go back a short time later. Upon returning to the room, the nurse would often not find the doll where she had left it. It would be in another room, sometimes accompanied by a piece of old parchment paper. The pieces of paper usually had eerie handwritten notes on them like, "Help me." Shortly after these experiences, the nurse called in a psychic to examine the doll. The psychic said there was a soul of a little girl named Annabelle inside the doll. Feeling sorry for the little girl and doll, the nurse tried to take care of the doll, but the doll wanted no part of it. It continued to frighten and harass the nurse until she called in Edward and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens are self-described paranormal investigators and demonologists. They proclaimed there was not the soul of a little girl inside the doll, but in fact a demon. The Warrens took Annabelle from the nurse and placed her in a glass case within their occult museum at their home in Monroe, Connecticut. The doll resides there to this day.
That's what Annabelle looks like.
It's not this. This is in the movie.
No, but I put that to compare it to the two. They definitely dolled it up. No pun intended. But yeah, you can see that's just a classic Raggedy Ann doll. But apparently the thing is very, very evil.
This one creeps me out. Just, I don't know. I guess it could just because of the movies and stuff, but I don't know. I don't like it.
Anytime like a documentary comes on TV that's involving haunted dolls, I'm like, yes, all right, bring it on. And nearly every one of them is discussing Annabelle.
It's definitely a big part of our pop culture.
Yeah. And there's been so many different stories with other people, but there's certain stories that always stick out. And I always go for the ones that always seem to overlap each other. In each one of these documentaries. So then I'm like, okay, maybe there's some truth behind that story. The point is, you mess with the doll, apparently the doll ends up hurting you. They keep it in a glass case at their occult museum, Edward and Lorraine Warren. And I believe they have like a priest come by either every 1 to 2 weeks and bless the whole museum just to keep everything in there at bay.
Do things still happen around the doll now, or you think they just keep it at bay with the...
Well, there's all sorts of different stories of people that have been to the museum, and like some people that have like tried messing with the doll and had like spooky, eerie things happen.
I wouldn't do that.
Hell no, I wouldn't do that. I'm not gonna mess with anything that like might be supernatural. Like just in case you bring that thing home, you know.
I don't like it. So the psychic that originally talked to this doll, was the demon acting like a little girl, or was the psychic just wrong?
There seems to be some like back and forth with that. Some people say there is a little girl in there. Obviously the Warrens say that there's a demon inside, but who can really tell the truth? Aside from us going in there and opening the case and shaking the little bastard, then we really won't know if the doll has anything, if it's true or not. Which, yeah, I would never do either.
On to the next one. The next doll we're going to talk about is Mandy.
Made in the mid-1910s, Mandy is a porcelain doll that was donated to the Quesnel Museum in British Columbia in 1991. Mandy's previous owner claimed she could no longer deal with the supernatural doll. The lady claimed hearing the spooky sounds of a baby crying coming from the doll. Once Mandy was placed in her glass case at the museum, other people began to claim having supernatural occurrences with the doll as well. Upon entering the room, many claim the doll would follow you around the room with its eyes. She's been known to tap on her glass case, move objects around the room, and electronic devices have a hard time working in her presence. She also hates to be in the same room as other dolls. In the past, other dolls were placed in the same room as Mandy, just to be found later torn to pieces. At night, little footsteps have been heard moving around the museum. A volunteer at the museum placed a little stuffed lamb in the case with Mandy to try and comfort her restless spirit. On several occasions, upon returning to the museum, staff would find the lamb sitting outside the case, not knowing how it got there. Mandy resides at the museum today.
So here is a picture of Mandy.
Oh.
Yeah, it looks like your classic porcelain baby doll.
Yeah, I don't like dolls in general. She just looks creepy, first of all.
Well, that's because her face is all scratched up.
But she almost looks like a real, too.
Yeah, that was the thing. A long time ago when, unfortunately, when young infants would die, I learned about this when we went to New Orleans and we went on ghost tours down there. And it was a very prevalent thing when children would pass away. They would often set porcelain dolls that looked similar to the child along with the baby, like when it was being buried or like being presented to everyone. And a lot of people believe that the spirits of those children that passed away a lot of times would go into the dolls. And there's several stories.
That's not comforting to me.
Yeah, well, there's several stories down there about how dolls going missing after they apparently have been possessed and never to be found again. She's definitely one of the more famous of the porcelain baby dolls, but it's definitely a more widespread thing than just this one instance.
Who do you think's inside the doll? Like a demon or a baby?
Maybe just a distraught baby. They said it just cries and then it moves around. But then that is weird that like they would find torn up baby dolls and everything. See, this is one of those accounts where it's like multiple people on multiple different times being like, yeah, there's weird stuff going on. We don't know why. Now, it could just be one other person inside there trying to keep everything going, you know?
Yeah.
Or trying to debunk it. But how do you know?
Yeah.
Unless you catch
them.
them. You know?
And like people say that their electronic devices don't work around her.
That's often very common occurrence when dealing with the supernatural. Because they got to draw, you know, power from somewhere.
I don't know.
Again, I don't know. I wouldn't know until I would like watch some more footage. If I saw some camera footage of seeing this little doll walking down the hallway, I'd be like,
are you kidding? I feel like that's not even a real thing. I don't really know how things end up torn up. I couldn't decide. Could you see a little doll really sitting there tearing up animals?
Yeah, I could in my mind. I could picture that, a little porcelain doll just being like with his little red eyes, just like.
Nobody would catch that on camera. Has that ever been caught on camera before? Ever?
No, it lives in the imagination within our minds. Those what ifs start spinning in our heads. We start making this, and we're like, I could totally picture that. And then we make movies behind it. We make TV shows behind it. And then we make fake documentaries where somebody throws a rock and they're like, what was that? So. To me, it's up to the person that's thinking about it. What do you believe? It really ain't what we believe. It's like, what do you believe about this? We just present it to you. The next doll we're going to be discussing is Okiku.
Okiku is a possessed doll in Japanese folklore. In 1918, a teen named Aikichi Suzuki purchased a doll from Hokkaido, an island in Japan, for his younger sister. Her name was Okiku. Soon after, Okiku dies of a serious illness and the family places the doll her brother got her in the shrine they prepared for their lost loved one. Over time, the family watched the doll's hair continue to grow like it was alive. The family believed Okiku's soul had went into the doll. To this day, the doll can be found at the Meninji Temple in Hokkaido, where it is reported that a priest regularly trims the doll's still growing hair.
And here is a picture of Okiku. So it does have long, long hair.
I wonder what the hair is made of. I guess it doesn't matter, does it?
I don't know. That's a good question, though.
She has bangs.
Yeah.
They trim her bangs?
Apparently the hair just keeps growing and they have to keep cutting it. But this is going back to what we were saying on the previous doll.
I know, but how do you put these things to rest, I wonder?
Like, how do you rest the soul that's within the doll?
Yeah, because that would be horrible, I feel. If the child's soul really is in the doll, like, that wouldn't be good for the child. Like, I just feel like, wouldn't you want the child to be at rest and, like, not be inside the doll anymore?
Oh, absolutely. But how do you know that the soul went in there in the first place?
Well, yeah, I agree.
You know? Like, all this is just, spiritual speculation. Is really what it is. A lot of times maybe it'd just be grief too,
That's
like you
true.
just lost your child and you're like wanting to believe that there's some piece of it still here on this earth, and you're like, its soul went into the doll. The doll's hair's still growing, which the hair growing thing is pretty weird. I would like to see some proof that the hair is growing, and of what she said, I would like to know what the doll's hair is made of.
Yeah.
Too. Like, if it was horse hair, then there might be the spirit of a horse in there. Like, the horse's tail just keeps growing, and they're like, the spirit of a little girl, but then the horse is like, no, it was me the whole time. Well, see, this is all just a bunch of hearsay because the doll Okiku is in a shrine, and a priest cuts its hair. That's just, taking everybody's word for what's going on.
And is he a barber? Is he licensed?
The bangs did look kind of crooked. All in all, this is just another one of those crazy stories that, like, do you believe it or do you not believe it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I need proof to believe it.
Yeah. It's spooky.
The last doll that we're going to talk about is Robert the doll.
The story of Robert the doll begins in Key West in the late 1800s. Thomas Otto moved to the island with his family and bought a mansion. The Ottos were rather wealthy people and had many Haitian servants working for them, which they were not very kind to. One Haitian lady in particular was hired to take care of Otto's son, Robert, and the two of them became pretty close. A short time later, the lady was fired after Mrs. Otto supposedly found her performing black magic. Before leaving, the lady gave Robert a 3-foot doll that had button eyes, human hair, and was filled with straw. Robert became infatuated with the doll, so much to the point that he named the doll after himself and proclaimed he was Robert's best friend. The doll became a member of the family. Soon after, Robert wanted to start being referred to by his middle name, Gene, because Robert was the name of the doll and not his. Weird incidents began throughout the house. Mrs. Otto and the servants reported on several occasions that they could hear Gene talking to someone in his room. Distant giggling was heard in other rooms that the family were not in, and Gene's other toys were often found torn apart. He was always accused and punished for these actions, but always proclaimed that Robert did it. After a while, enough was enough, and Gene was sent to live with other family members, and Robert was placed in the attic in a box. Years passed, and Mr. and Mrs. Otto passed away. Gene was now married and inherited the old family mansion. He retrieved his old friend Robert from the attic, and they picked up right where they left off. Gene's wife hated the doll and demanded that it stayed in the attic. Gene remodeled the turret room in the attic and made Robert his own personalized bedroom. Years went by, and eventually Gene and his wife died as well. Robert remained in his turret bedroom for years. Adults who were children back then remember seeing Robert peek through the curtains of his bedroom windows down at them. Maintenance men that ever had to go up in the attic reported hearing sinister laughing and tiny footsteps running across the floor when they weren't in the room. Shortly after, a new family bought the mansion and remodeled it. They removed Robert from his room and stored him in the attic, but he didn't stay there. The family reported footsteps and laughing throughout the house as well. The family had enough and promptly left the home. After all that, Robert was removed from the home and placed at the East Martello Museum in Key West. He resides today in a see-through case sitting on a chair. Workers at the museum claim he shifts around in the case and demands that you do not make fun of him and that you politely ask to take his picture or something bad will happen to you. The museum receives many letters every year begging for forgiveness because certain tourists did not respect the doll's wishes.
Let me show you a picture of Robert.
He's
Ladies
creepy.
and gentlemen, I have met Robert before, and yes, I asked permission to go in and say hi to the dude at the museum.
Did you take his picture?
My mom did. I didn't want to take his picture because there was something very, very eerie about this little guy sitting in the case, just kind of looking at you.
So in this picture, are those all the letters that people sent? Oh my God.
My mom, a long time ago, took my brothers and I down to Key West for vacation, and she wanted to take us and show us this haunted doll. But before then, we had already taken a haunted tour of Key West, and in one of the ghost stories, somebody told us about the back history and everything of Robert the doll. And then we actually got to meet Robert the doll, and he's every bit as spooky as you can possibly imagine, ladies and gentlemen. We actually saw the house that he lived in. But no, it's a very prevalent story down there in Key West. And a lot of times people tease you, though, while you're on these ghost tours. People will drive by and like yell like, "Ooh!"
Really?
Yeah, they'll mock you for like going around and listening to all these ghost stories. But they're still fun.
I mean, it could just be them inciting that on you by telling you the story. Because I feel uneasy right now, you know, and I'm not in the presence of the doll, but you know, it's just creepy.
Yeah, but apparently there was just multiple instances over multiple years of Robert messing with people. All I can say is that the doll does exist, and when I met him, I definitely had an eerie feeling upon meeting the guy. And yes, I was very respectful and like was treating it as if it was alive, because better safe than sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I don't want to sit here and have to write a letter asking for forgiveness later on down the road. But if you ever feel like going down to Key West and saying hi or antagonizing them, if that's really the thing you want to do, I'm not going to suggest it, but teach their own. Do what you want.
No, I wouldn't, but I don't even want to see it. Really. Yeah, let us know what you all think in the comments below about like all of these stories as well.
Or if you've met any of these dolls, we would love to hear your experiences with them. If you thought it was like, you felt something, or if you think they're real, or if you think it's just complete crap.
Yeah, I would like to hear that too. Alright, well that brings us to the end of today's video. We hope you've enjoyed hearing about these haunted dolls.
Give us some likes and subscribe and ring that bell for future notifications.
And you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Jarissa Explains.
Yep. And just thank you all for watching. Continue to watch our videos and our power hours. And stay tuned for more stuff coming up here in October.
We will see you all in our next video.
Bye.
Bye.